A new report warns that famine is imminent in northern Gaza, where 70% of the people are said to be experiencing catastrophic hunger. The UN-backed report says virtually everyone in Gaza is struggling to get enough food and projects famine to occur in the north of the enclave anytime between now and May. Meanwhile, Israel will send a delegation to Washington to discuss the Rafah invasion alternatives with the Biden administration. This comes after President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu held a phone call yesterday. The White House has been skeptical of Netanyahu's plans to carry out an operation in the southern city.
The president explained why he is so deeply concerned about the prospect of Israel conducting major military operations in Rafah of the kind it conducted in Gaza City and Khan Yunis. First, more than 1 million people have taken refuge in Rafah. They went from Gaza City to Khan Yunis and then to Rafah. And they have nowhere else to go. Gaza's other major cities have largely been destroyed. And Israel has not presented us or the world with a plan for how or where they would safely move those civilians, let alone feed and house them and ensure access to basic things like sanitation.
Well, Secretary of State Antony Blinken will visit the Middle East this week again as efforts to secure a ceasefire and hostage release deal continue. Our Chris Livesay is following the latest from Tel Aviv. Chris, good morning.
Good morning, Anne Maria. There was a real awkward silence that was brewing between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Biden over Israel's handling of the war, and namely the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza. Well, that silence was broken last night when the two leaders got on the phone together. Now, the White House says President Biden told Benjamin Netanyahu he needs to come up with a coherent plan, not just for defeating Hamas, but specifically dealing with Rafah, that town that's on the border with Egypt in southern Gaza, where more than 1 million Palestinians have taken refuge. But of course, it's also a Hamas stronghold where Israel says they're using civilians as human shields. Biden told Netanyahu that he needs to come up with a plan, present a plan to the United States also about how to evacuate these people. Now, they decided they would all convene in the United States in Washington to have a meeting to discuss alternatives to this invasion, as there is a mounting humanitarian crisis unfolding in the Gaza Strip. According to the global body that declares famine, there is now a famine in Gaza for more than 1 million people. So it's images like these of people not just dying from open combat, but from lack of food that are forcing Washington to lose its patience. And also people in Israel, many of whom are family members of hostages, losing patience as well. More than 100 hostages, now more than 5 months, who remain in Hamas captivity despite this ongoing war. And Anne Marie, I need to emphasize that several of these hostages are American citizens.
It's definitely a good reminder, and I know there's a lot of talk about people being on the brink of starvation, but as I understand it, there's already reports of several children starving to death. So I don't know if they're on the brink or if it's already here. Chris, thank you very much.